All right, let's do this. We're diving into Fight Club, and here's the thing. We're not just talking about the fighting, right?
No, not just the fighting, though. It was definitely a big part of it. But there's this whole other level, this philosophical layer that most people don't really talk about.
It's like beneath all the brawls and explosions, Fight Club is really tapping into something a lot of us feel, even if we don't want to admit it.
Exactly. That feeling of emptiness, that sense of being lost in a world that's telling you to buy.
And it's funny because you've probably seen the movie, maybe even a few times, but we're going to uncover some stuff, some connections to your own life that you might not expect.
It's true. What's fascinating about Fight Club is how it takes these huge, complex ideas like consumerism, identity, even the meaning of life, and throws them right in your face.
Yeah, and it does it in a way that's both entertaining and thought-provoking. So let's start with our main man, the narrator. He's this average guy, completely stuck in a rut.
Oh, I know exactly who you mean. The guy who's just going through the motions, working a job he hates, buying stuff he doesn't need.
Totally. He even calls it the IKEA nesting instinct. I mean, how many of us are out there trying to build the perfect life out of a catalog?
Right. And the thing is, even when we get all the stuff, the perfect apartment, the right clothes, it's like there's still this emptiness.
Yes, that's exactly it. It's like we're chasing something, but we don't even know what it is.
And we end up feeling even more lost in the process. Like we've been sold this idea of happiness that's not even real.
Okay, so we've got our narrator stuck in this cycle of consumerism and disillusionment. And that's where Tyler Durden walks in, right?
Ah, Tyler Durden, yeah. He's like the anti-narrator, this charismatic, rebellious force of nature. He's everything the narrator isn't.
Exactly. And he doesn't just whine about the problems, he calls them out. Remember that line about the celebrity magazines and the 500 channels and having some guy's name on his underwear?
Oh, yeah. Brilliant line. He's basically saying, we think we're making our own choices, but are we really? Or are we just products of this system that tells us what to want, what to think, even what to wear?
It's almost like we need a wake-up call, something to jolt us out of this consumerist coma. It's like we're all sleepwalking through life, and Tyler Durden is that bucket of cold water we need.
Exactly. And what's the first thing he does? He starts Fight Club.
Yeah, about that. On the surface, it seems kind of messed up, right? Like, is beating each other up really the answer to our problems?
Okay, on its own, definitely not. But remember, we're talking about Fight Club here. It's a metaphor.
A metaphor for what, though?
Think of it this way. The narrator, our average Joe, is completely numb. He's living this empty, meaningless life. Fight Club, brutal as it is, it makes him feel something again. Anything.
Oh, right. It's like that rush you get when you face a fear, but amplified.
Exactly. And what's interesting, it wasn't just a movie thing. Real life Fight Clubs started popping up after the movie came out.
Oh, yeah, I remember hearing about that. Kind of disturbing, but I get it. Shows you how much the movie resonated.
It tapped into something primal,
Yeah.
That need for intensity, for release, even if through violence. Makes you wonder.
If we've gone too far in the other direction.
Maybe. We try to sanitize everything, organize our lives, make it all look perfect on Instagram. But what about that raw, instinctual part of us? Where does that fit in?
So you're saying Fight Club, even with all the violence, is showing us something we've lost.
Think of that ancient Greek philosopher, Diogenes. Lived in a barrel, rejected all material possessions, embraced a simple life.
People probably thought he was nuts.
Well, they did. But he was onto something. True freedom, he said, comes from letting go of societal expectations, from the need to have more, be more.
Okay, now I see where you're going with this. Tyler Durden, with his hit me as hard as you can attitude, he's like a modern day Diogenes.
Totally. It's about stripping away the facade, confronting the rawness of existence, figuring out what really matters.
We're not condoning violence here, by the way.
Definitely not. Don't go starting any fight clubs in your basement. But it makes you think, have we become too obsessed with comfort? With avoiding risk and discomfort? Maybe we need a little bit of that primal energy back in our lives.
All right, so we've talked about primal urges and rejecting society's rules, but then there's that whole other side of Fight Club, the one that's a little harder to swallow.
You mean Tyler Durden's whole self-destruction thing? Yeah, that's definitely where things get really interesting.
Yeah, interesting might be one word for it. I mean, isn't that kind of a dangerous message? Even if it makes for a good movie, are we supposed to actually root for self-destruction?
Well, here's the thing. It's easy to get caught up in the literal violence, but like with the Fight Club itself, Tyler's not really talking about physically destroying yourself.
So what is he talking about then?
Think of it this way. We all build up this idea of who we are based on our jobs, our possessions, what other people think of us. Tyler calls this the false self. And sometimes you have to tear that down to find out who you really are underneath it all.
Okay, so it's more like destroying the image you have of yourself, the one you've been clinging to, even if it's not really serving you.
Exactly. It's about shedding those layers, confronting the things you're afraid of, even if it's painful. Remember that scene with the convenience store clerk, Raymond?
Oh yeah, intense scene. Tyler basically holds a gun to his head and tells him to go follow his dreams.
Exactly. It's a pretty extreme way of making a point, but the message is clear. Raymond was stuck in a life he hated, too afraid to go after what he really wanted. Tyler forces him to confront that fear, to choose something different.
So it's about pushing past your comfort zone, even if it feels like you're gonna break.
And you know what? Sometimes you kind of do have to break a little to really see what you're made of. It's like Tyler says, you are not your job. You are not your Fing khakis.
Man, that's such a great line. It's like he's stripping away all those external markers we use to define ourselves, all those things we think we need to be worthy.
Right. And it's terrifying to think about who you are without all that stuff, without the labels, the titles, the possessions, but it's also incredibly freeing because it allows you to start defining yourself on your own terms.
Okay, I'm with you so far. But then Tyler goes even further, right? He starts talking about hope, even about God, and how maybe we shouldn't even want those things.
And it's like, whoa, hold on a minute. Isn't hope supposed to be a good thing?
Exactly. It just seems so bleak.
Here's how I see it, and bear with me. Tyler's not saying hope is inherently bad. He's saying that sometimes even hope can be a crutch. It can keep us clinging to something outside of ourselves, waiting for someone else to fix things.
So by rejecting hope, he's actually pushing us to take responsibility for our own lives.
Exactly. If no one's coming to save us, not even God, then it's up to us to create the lives we want, to find our own meaning and purpose. It's a scary thought for sure, but also empowering. And ultimately, that's what Fight Club is all about, isn't it? It's about shaking us awake, forcing us to confront the big questions, even the uncomfortable ones.
It's like Tyler Durden is this chaotic philosopher throwing Molotov cocktails at our preconceived notions, making us question everything.
And maybe that's what we need sometimes. Not to blow up buildings, but to blow up the parts of ourselves that are holding us back.
So where does that leave us? What are we supposed to do with all this? Go start our own fight clubs?
Definitely not. Violence is not the answer, but asking the tough questions, confronting our fears, and building something better. Yeah, I think that's something we can all get behind.
Absolutely. It's about finding your own version of Fight Club, a space where you can be challenged, where you can explore who you really are and what you're capable of becoming. And maybe, just maybe, that's how we start building a world that's a little less IKEA catalog and a little more authentically human. That's all the time we have for today's deep dive, but the conversation doesn't have to end here. What false selves are you ready to confront? What kind of world do you want to build? Let us know in the comments, and we'll see you next time.